Hello and welcome to a new Google Sheets and Google Apps Script video in Practical Sheets. Today I'm going to do a really cool thing, and it's a web app for inventory. Well, we're just going to start it because this would be a 3-4 hour video if I do it complete. But we're going to do the basis of an inventory web app where you'll be able to store your purchases and all the input of goods to your inventory. So let's do the test to see what you're getting into. So this is a web page that you could share with anyone you like, with your employees, with your teammates, with your partners, with your customers, with your suppliers, whoever. This is the nice thing. And they don't need to have permission to your Google Sheet. They don't need to access your Google Sheet. They only have access to this form. It's very similar to Google Forms, with the difference that it's much more flexible and you could do a lot more customization, a lot more. So let's try it. I did a very quick inventory of Cook Appliances product and I pasted this, and then I have my purchases here. So let's try it out. Let's say we're going to use the reference APP020 and we're going to buy 50 of these APP020. We're going to save and we go back to our sheet, and you can see that it stored immediately the APP020. I know this is just a basic version because many of you will say, okay, but maybe we could do this with a drop down. Maybe we could have see when I do the reference, see down here if it is the appliance I want, or things like that. We could do this in further versions, but for now what I wanted to do is to create the basic app that it works, and then if you like it, we're going to start optimizing it in further videos. I know you're going to like it because it is really nice once you finished it, and it saves you a lot of time and a lot of headaches, especially. So if you don't want to hear me all through the video, then you can just go to the Patreon page, download the web app and start using it immediately, and also have access to more than 100 videos in the channel and ask me questions about these projects. If not, just a subscription to the channel or a like or a comment is more than enough. Thank you so much, especially to my Patreons, and let's begin. I'm not going to waste a lot of time doing the basic inventory stuff because these I've already covered in more than 15 videos in the channel. So this I'm going to do it very quickly and move to the interesting part, that is the web app. But I try to begin from scratch, so you don't need to have seen another 20 videos to be able to catch up with this one, okay? So normally in an inventory, we have 4 basic sheets. The product, then we have the input or the purchases, then we have the sales or the outputs, and then we have the inventory. That's it. You could add a lot of things and auxiliary adjustments, whatever you want, dashboard. But with these 4 basic sheets, you're going to be just fine. So I asked ChatGPT to give me a list of appliances. So we're going to sell kitchen appliances. Okay, so I have the appliance, I have the category, I have the price. Let's say we could have 2 things, the price and the cost, because I'm going to be a distributor. I'm going to, or a retailer. I'll buy and then I'll sell at another cost. So just for the exercise, we're going to do a cost that will be half the price or 25% the price. And we're going to allow it to autofill and maybe just, well, you can leave it like it is. So this is what I need. I need my products because this is what will help me make easier the inputs and the outputs. So now we're going to start with the inputs or the purchases. I don't know if today will be enough to do purchases and then sales. Maybe we'll leave sales for part 2, but let's begin. What do I need in the purchase? I need the product. Maybe there are 2 ways we could do. We could have a reference, or we could do it directly with the appliance. Let's have a reference. And we're just going to do appliance 001 and up to the one we have. So I just double click in this small blue circle, and then I have my references. So we're going to select it by reference, but in the future we could select it also by appliance. So what do I need? I need my reference. I need what does it mean, what appliance it is. Then I would need the cost because now I'm buying it. Cost. How many units? So quantity. And maybe the total is just multiplying the cost by the quantity. And finally, we could have the date. That's it. That's what I need. Normally we could do this in Google Sheets. It will be very easy. We could add some drop downs, but again, we've done this multiple times. We're going to use a web app this time. So the idea of the web app is that you don't need to enter Google Sheets. So let's say you are the owner of the business and someone is helping you to buy and input the inventory. So you don't want him to come into the sheet, but because maybe he'll see the past records or maybe can damage something, and then you need to protect it, and then you just complicate everything because you don't want him to see this sheet, but this sheet he could see, and then maybe if he's in the cell phone, it's more difficult to fill out a Google Sheet in the cell phone and all of those problems. So the web app will eliminate those problems because it's a web app. It's a web page that you could easily access through your phone, through your tablet, through your computer, and access like it was a Google form or any other form. Very, very simple to use. So this is what we're going to do. Extensions, AppScript. Let's begin immediately because this is not as easy as other of my codes. So we've already done some videos about web apps that I go step by step. So you could go and watch those if you want, if you are very, very basic, but I will try not to go that fast so you can follow up. The first thing you need in a web app is the doGet function. The doGet function is, let's say, a predefined function that is the one you need for the app to start, to implement, to create. Without this, you don't have anything, okay? doGet, you could include an E. You're going to see some examples with an E. This time, we don't need it, so we are not going to include it for now. The second thing you need, it's an HTML, because web apps normally have various layers. The user interface layer, what you're going to see, everything you see here in a web page, this is the user interface, the nice part, the design part. So this, we do it with an HTML normally. And how do we render HTMLs in Google Apps Script? With this HTML service. It has 4 methods that we could use. The one we're going to use today is this one, create HTML output from file. Why? Because from file allows me to create a separate HTML and I don't have to put it inside my parentheses and create all the HTML. This would work if the HTML is very basic, it's a text or just something that I could write in a couple of lines. But if it's going to be a more complex, a form like or a table or something like that, it doesn't make any sense to do it without a file. So we're going to do it from file. This means we need to create the file. So we're going to put the name here. Let's say it's going to be called purchases. Because then we're going to have, maybe we could have some other ones, or actually not purchases. Let's call it main. Then we need to create this main. So here I'm going to click on this cross button to add a file. We're going to add an HTML file and we're going to call it main. It needs to be the same name I wrote here, and let's hit enter. Okay, now I have my HTML, and just for testing purposes, let's say my inventory app, web app. Okay, I could store this in a variable or simply just return this, and this should work. We're going to save. And now how do I get this doGet to work? If I hit play, there are no errors, but I don't see any web app. To create a web app, I need to deploy it. So I'm going to hit in this button that says deploy, and we're going to create a new deployment because it's the first time we do it. We're going to select the deployment type, that will be web app, and let's call it inventory web app. Or what is this? Cook appliances inventory web app. For now, we're going to execute it as me, and only me will have access. Once you need to share it, we could change this for anyone with Google account or anyone. Okay, for now, let's leave it only myself. I will teach you how to change this later. For now, I'm going to deploy it, and I'm going to go to my web app in this URL. Click. And here is my inventory. But you say, hey, I don't like this name, so I'm going to change it. Let's click done. Here in my main, I'm going to say my kitchen appliances inventory web app. I'm going to save, and I'm going to refresh, and you don't see any change. Why? Because this is the deployed version, let's say the published version. For this to work, we need to generate a test deployment. So here in deploy, I will change this for test deployments. And now I have my test deployment, just the first time. And now I click, and now you can see that all my changes now, I don't have to deploy it every time to see the changes. So I could do all my testing here. That is basically the same URL, but with a /dev, and the published one is /exec. So I could do all my tests, but when I want to publish it to share, then I would have to deploy it again. This is what we're going to do at the end of the tutorial. I don't want to go too long on what a web app is and what are its components, because this would take me a long while. But suffice it to say that we can separate a web app in 3 layers, especially the HTML. We have the HTML layer, that is this you can see here. Let's see here, all the tags and the texts. This is the first layer. The second layer will be the painting that is in HTML is called CSS. It's another language that is just for formatting. And the third layer is the JavaScript, that is the engine, what makes things run. For example, if I click here and something happens, all of this is JavaScript, or most of it, okay? So we could create a whole CSS file with all the options so that this text is red and the font and the size. But there's an easier way to do it, and the easier way to do it is called a framework. It's something that someone already did, that has the CSS already done. You just need to install it by copying one line here, and it will work perfect without you having to create a CSS file from scratch. So there are many frameworks. One of the most used is called Bootstrap. So we're going to go to Google, hit Bootstrap. This is the most popular HTML, CSS, and JS library. We're going to go here to get started with Bootstrap. And we're just going to copy this part. Actually, the only thing I need is this head part for now. Then we can, the script, we could use it, but for now, I don't think we're going to need it a lot. Just the head. Actually, the part that we most need is this CSS library, because this is the one that's going to give us the nice formatting. Okay, so we're going to copy this head, go to our project, and here we're going to replace the head with this. Okay, let's save it, and let's try again our our dev actually. Let's refresh it. And now you can see very small changes, but now at least you see that the font changed. So you see that something happened. With Bootstrap, we could do just a course only on Bootstrap, and there are online. But for now, there are just a couple of things you need to know. First is the container. We're going to create a container so that we can have some margins, and we don't have to create the margins manually, and you don't see this all stacked up to the border of the screen. So we're going to create just a div. Suffice to say that the way that HTMLs are organized is with tags, and one of the main tags that are used for organizing an HTML is called the div. So inside my body, that is where everything will be, we're going to create a div, and we're going to give it the class container. There are a lot of classes in Bootstrap, and again, this would merit entire courses and videos only for Bootstrap. But the container, again, is just for having a bit more breathing room. Let's refresh. And now it looks nicer because now we have some space. We'll learn in a further video how to delete this. For now, we can click the X button, but this will always appear. So there are some ways we could do this that I will show you later. Okay, that out of the way, we're going to the critical part of this web app, that is the form. I need to do a form so I could choose which product and how many units and all that we're going to need. So for that, we can go here to my Bootstrap and look for a form. This is a shift through a form, an HTML form. So we can go here to the forms overview, and we could select a basic form. This is the nice thing about Bootstrap, that I can have that I could look for something and just copy the code and paste it here. So down here, we're going to, maybe we could also include this into divs, separate this so that the title is separated from, actually we could put this as an H1. This is called a header. So this is the title. And then we're going to put another div. This is where I'm going to put my form. Here I'm going to paste what I just copied from the Bootstrap. I'm going to right click and say format document. So it looks better. You can see the hierarchy here of the tags. HTML is based on nested tags. So H1 comes inside div, and form comes inside this div, and the label comes inside this div, and all that. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is remove this form, because this will just cause troubles. There's a way of doing this with the form object, but I'm not such a fan. We could do it, but I'm going to remove the form, and this type submit of the button, we can remove it for now, because we're not submitting a form. We're going to do everything through JavaScript. We're going to save and just see how does this look. Now I have a nice form. Okay, I need to change this, but it looks good. So I have two input forms where I could write something and a button to submit. Okay, now it doesn't do anything because I removed the form and I removed the type submit. So it doesn't do anything weird and starts going to a blank page and all that. So you can see that what we copied from the Bootstrap, it has some classes so that it looks centered and it looks really nice, and it applies a bit more margin, so it looks really cool. This is achieved by these classes. The classes are properties of each tag that help in the formatting and in the execution with the JavaScript. Okay, so now let's go to each of these objects, of these inputs. The inputs have two parts, the label and the input. So here we see, for example, this label, and then we see this input. That they could have additional things. For example, we have this email help, but I could remove this. The most important thing in the inputs first is the type. So for now, we're going to leave it as text, because for everything we're going to type it. In the future, we're going to change this with some drop downs so that it's much better. But for now, I just want a form that works. Then we're going to start adding really nice things, maybe in the next video. The class form controller, we could remove it or leave it. It's just so that this looks nicer. So there's no need to remove it. The other important thing is the ID. We're going to put an ID to this first label. So this will be, let's go back to our purchases. What is the first thing we need? The reference. So we're going to call this in the label, we're going to call this reference. And the ID should be reference or reference input. You could be, let's keep it simple for now. Okay, this email help, I could remove it. Perfect. And the label, so that HTML knows that this label is for this input, we should change the for with this same ID reference. Perfect. Let's click again, right click and format document. Nice. And let's do the same for the second one. So we have reference. What else? I think the appliance, we could get it via code, something similar to a VLOOKUP to get the appliance. So it doesn't make any sense that I have to write the reference and then I have to write the appliance. Or I write the reference or I write the appliance, but not both. The cost, it should also be able, the code, to go and fetch it from here. So I shouldn't need to write it. The quantity, I should be able to write it. The total will be a formula, and the date should be today's date, and maybe in the future we could also have the possibility to input a date. So for now, just the reference and the quantity. So we keep it simple. So the second one will be here, the type. We could put text, even better, we could put number. And you can see that it has a nice number selector. We'll leave the form control, and the ID will change it by for quantity. Here in our label, we'll also change this for quantity, and the text will also be quantity. And one thing maybe I forgot is that here I could put an H2, because remember this will be the purchases. So I could put an H2 that says input your purchase. So I have my quantity, I have my reference. I could remove this checkbox, I don't need it. And the button, let's call it submit or maybe save. And that's it. Or register, save it, and let's update. And now it looks really cool. So now the formatting part looks great. Maybe we could change it. We could change some colors. We could put the quantity here. I wanted to show you here that you cannot write, given that we said that it was type number, we cannot write any letters, and we could use these arrows to increase or decrease. I think this is really nice. Here you could put negative. In the future we could restrict that, but for now I think we are doing okay. Now let's go to the code part. That is another half of the video. So for the code part, we're going to use another tag that is called script. This is where we're going to include our script. And you will see in some tutorials online that all of the script, many people, many coders in Google Apps Script change it and put them in another file called JS. This is nice thing. It's a better way to keep it organized, but I like to do that at the end once we finish our code, because then you don't know where, especially if you're learning, you don't know what is what, and in my experience, you get more confused. So I prefer to leave it like this, and then for more advanced users, then you could change it and move it to a separate JavaScript file. Okay, so this will be very basic what we're going to do. We're going to write, for example, app002 and quantity 2. And what I want is that when I click save, this will go to my spreadsheet. That's it. That's all I want. So for this, I need to save, to store somewhere the variable, this value and this value. So as in Google Apps Script, we're going to work with functions. This is very similar because Google Apps Script is based on JavaScript. So if you already know how to code a bit or have done some projects in JavaScript, in Google Apps Script, JavaScript won't be that difficult. Or if you're a programmer, well, you're better than me in this regard, actually. So we're going to call this store purchase. And what we need for stop purchase is the reference and the quantity. How do we get the reference and the quantity? Using a property of JavaScript called document. Here is where I say that Google Apps Script needs a bit more help in the HTML because I don't have any help. So what I recommend if you are just starting is to download an HTML or a code editor. I use one called Visual Studio Code, but I'm sure there are 100 more. So there you could add a new file and call it testing.html. You hit enter. It doesn't matter where it creates it. And what we're going to do is we're going to paste all the HTML, Control A, then Control C to copy, and Control V to paste. So now, where I start writing document, then I have some help. Because in JavaScript, we don't have any help in Google Apps Script. So I prefer to do it and then you paste it again. Maybe it's not that good working two programs, but it will save you some headaches in the future. Okay, so document. Then there are a couple of methods we could use here. The one we're going to use is get element by ID, because remember that we gave an ID to the reference, an ID to the quantity. So here, remember what was my ID? It was called a reference in this case. So in quotation marks, we're going to put reference. And then we're going to do the same for the quantity. Document dot get element by ID. Okay. We could do this now. Now we could go back. I'm going to copy this. I think we don't need for now the Visual Studio Code. We're going to paste it again. We could do this two ways. We could have two variables. For example, we could say variable reference to pass it. Now, the next thing we need to do is to pass these variables to Google Apps Script. Remember, this is JavaScript, and JavaScript will communicate with Google Apps Script. So JavaScript is what is called a client-side programming language. So it's talking with Google Chrome. So this makes it faster. On the other hand, Google Apps Script is a server-side language. This means that it always has to go and knock to the servers of Google to do anything. So JavaScript needs to communicate with Google Apps Script some way. So we're going to learn how in a couple of minutes. For now, suffice it to say that we need to store some variables to send then to Google Apps Script. So the first way to doing this is to have the number of variables you want, variable ref and then variable quantity. Okay? But the thing is, here we only have 2. But if we're going to have 10, then sending 10 variables will be cumbersome. So what we could do is create an object that may be called purchase. An object is characterized by starting and ending with a bracket. Okay, so now what we can do, instead of creating new variables, instead of my object with the dot, I could create any variable I want. The nice thing about this is that then I don't need to send each variable, but I'm only going to send purchase. Think of it as a bag where you have any number of variables you want, and then you'll take this bag and send it to Google Apps Script. And then Google Apps Script will open the bag and use whatever it needs from the bag. Okay, so this is why I prefer this method. The thing is, we don't need the get element, but we don't need the input. We need the value of the input. This is why we need last thing, and is this value property or attribute. Now we have the reference, now we have the quantity, now we can send it. How do we send it? This is the crux, this is the basic of Google Apps Script based web apps, is this google.script.run. This is everything. So here, what you're going to do in google.script.run is be able to run a function you have here in your Google Apps Script, to run it from the JavaScript. That's it. This is the Bible of web apps based in Google Apps Script. So what we need to do is a function here. And the function is going to be store purchase. Store purchase. This store purchase will receive an object, purchase. And then what it's going to do with this object, that is this same object, purchase. So when I send it back here, it's going to do something with this bag, with these variables. In this case, we only have 2 variables, ref and quantity. So I'm missing one thing, and is the name, that is this store purchase. And we open parentheses and we're going to send our purchase. And that's it. We could complicate things in the future, and we could say we can handle errors and handle success and whatever, but for now, let's keep it really, really simple for this first minimum viable web app. Okay, so now I have my purchase that I know that has 2 elements, the quantity and the reference. So I need to put the quantity, the reference here, and the quantity here. That's it. So it's not that complicated. We're going to connect with my Google Sheet with my sheet purchase, and then just append the row with these 2 things. One comment, quick comment, is that here I did this inside my Google Sheet just to make it easier to share it to my patrons and to the students of the academy and all that. But you don't need to do it like that. You could separate it and separate the web app in a independent app script. This is what is called a bound app script, a Google Sheet bound app script. It lives inside the Google Sheet. So it's important to know that. So now let's begin. Let's connect with our spreadsheet. How do we do with Google Sheets, with this spreadsheet app? Then we're going to connect with this spreadsheet with the method getActiveSpreadsheet. And I like to call this WS. I like to call it file or worksheet, but you'll see it online in many tutorials as WS. So let's keep it like that. And then I'm going to connect to this specific sheet, purchases. So for this, we're going to get my active spreadsheet that now is called WS, and I'm going to call the method, let's give a bit more zoom, the method getSheetByName. So I will give the specific name, in my case, purchases, and we're going to store it in a spreadsheet variable. Actually, we could call it purchase spreadsheet, so it's better. And now I'm going to to my purchase spreadsheet, we're going to append a row. This is the most easy method. That is the easiest method to add new data. We could do it in other ways, but I think I love this. Append the row. And what do we need? As you see in the example, we need an array. An array. In my case, I only have my purchase object only brings two things, the reference and the quantity, but my row here has 6 things. For now, I'm going to leave them empty. So reference, empty, empty, quantity, empty, empty. Okay. So purchase dot. Remember, with the dot, I'm accessing my bag, the bag that JavaScript sent to Google Apps Script. And I say, hey, remember that you had an object that is called reference, a variable? Okay, give me that. Then I'm going to leave it empty. I'm going to leave another one empty. And then, hey, I'm going to reach again for the bag and go for my quantity. And then empty again, and then empty again. That's it. It should work. Let's save. Let's go here. We're going to update. Authorization is required to perform that action. Given that now from JavaScript, we are calling some functions in Google Sheets, we need to give permissions to the app to access Google Sheets. For this, it's as simple as selecting the toGet function here and run it one time, and it will ask for your permissions. Let's review the permissions. Here we'll select Practical Sheets. I should have given a title here, but not, so I click Advanced and then go to Untitled Project and hit Allow. And now I can test it again. Reload it. Okay, and let's do app002. I know many of you are thinking, why don't you have a dropdown? Okay, I want to go baby steps, so this may be the subject of the next video. app002, and we're going to buy 5. Let's save. Another thing we could do is clear this, but again, we could do it later. Let's see. I have an error. I forgot a very important thing. I have this, let's go to our HTML. I have this function, store purchase, but I'm not calling it anywhere. Where I'm going to call my store purchase function. So the most normal thing is that I call it when I click this save button. So there are a number of ways of doing this. One easy way is to create here, how is this called? An attribute, I think it's called, onClick attribute, that will call the function that I give it here once I click the button. So inside quotation marks, I'm going to write store purchase and open and close the parentheses. Let's save and let's try one more time. Refresh. Again, let's go up 003, quantity 4, save. Let's go here and now we have it. Wow, 40 minutes and we just did this, I know. Buha, but give me just a couple of minutes. We are more than halfway there. Okay. So what I'm missing now, this is working, and let's do it again just to 5, and here we're going to buy 2 and let's save, and it continues to work. So now I'm going to start to fill these things up. The first thing will be the appliance. So the appliance, I need to go with the reference that I have. I could go to my products and look for the reference and bring it here. So let's do it. Everything will be done. I think we don't need to touch the HTML for now, for today. We're going just to do the function in Google Apps Script. That is where we feel more comfortable. So here we're going to do some calculations. So the first calculation I want to do is to go to my product and look for the reference that is the same purchase reference. Okay. So I already stored my purchase spreadsheet, but now I'm going to need my product spreadsheet. So very similar to this line, let product spreadsheet equals to ws.getSheetByName products. And now what I need from those products is to get the list of all these table. How do I get this? We're going to say product ss.getDataRange and get the values. This is what I need. And we're going to call this product table or product data, better. Product data. In order for me to look for the reference in this product data, I cannot look it in the product data, I need to look for it in this first column. For this, I'm going to create an auxiliary column, let's say auxiliary variable or auxiliary array called reference list. And it will be, we're going to get my product data and say, hey, I just need you to create an array only of this first column. How do I do it? With the map method. The map method goes row by row and does whatever I want with each row. So what I'm going to need in this case is, hey, go to this row and just return this first value, and then go to this row and just return this first value and create a list only of these values. Okay, so each row, this is called a callback function in the arrow style. So for each row, we're just going to return the first value. Remember that in arrays, the first value is number 0. And now I have my reference list. Now, in my calculations, I could do the reference list and use this index of function. Something is not working. Let me see what could be not working. Dot. If Google Apps Script is not working here, then something is off. Let me see, product data dot map row. Get here, my parentheses in get data range. Okay, so this is a very, very nice tip in Google Apps Script. If you know that the reference list, when I hit dot, should give you some options here, and it doesn't give you any options, then you need to look upstairs in your code because something is missing. This is a very nice, how do you say, hint that something is wrong before you even execute the code. Okay. In the reference list, we're going to use this index of function, and we're going to look for my purchase.ref. We're going to see, and it should return something, because right now we have no validation that this should work, but maybe we could do it in the future. But for now, we assume that if you put a reference, then it's a reference that we have in our products. Okay. So this, we're going to store it in a variable called index, index. And then with this index, the index will be the number of the row where it found, for example, app 003, it will return the number 4. Reality is the number 3 because it's an array, remember. But it doesn't matter, it's this row. And now I need to go and find whatever I like in a VLOOKUP. So in this moment, I need the appliance that is position number 1. Remember that this is 0 and this is 1. Okay, so I could create a new variable that is called the appliance. And it will be in my product data, you go to the index. So here where you found the app03, for example, go to the index and then go to the column number 1 because it's the appliance 1. Okay, this is the appliance. And let's say I also need the cost. So this would be column number 0, 1, 2, 3. So let cost will be project data, index, and column number 3. So now I have appliance. Let's see here, I have appliance, I have cost. And I could put it right here instead of the empty. I could put appliance, and here I could put cost. What else am I missing? I need the total and I need the total and I need the date. The total is very easy because it's just multiplying the cost with the quantity. So cost times purchase dot quantity. This will be the total. And the date with a date constructor using this new date. Again, in the future, maybe we could let the user pick its date. But for now, I don't want to worry about that. So after the quantity, we're going to put the total. And after the total, we're going to put the date. And this should work. And I could go out of here. Let's save. Let's refresh. And now let's do app007. Quantity 7. Save. Let's go here. So app007, let's confirm its food processor. Perfect. It should cost 25. So 25 and I bought 7, so it's 175 and I bought it December 13. Excellent. So more than an inventory web app, this is a stock purchasing web app. Now you can start storing all your purchases, and finally you could do the inventory. But again, I have plenty of videos where I do that. In the second part, if you like this video, we could do then the sales and finally complete them in the inventory. I hope you liked it. Actually, you could do the sales very similarly. As I told you at the beginning, you don't need this to be a web app inside a Google Sheet. So you could have a different web app in an independent Google Apps script file, but you could refer also to this file, and write into this file also. But we will look at this in the next video. Just one thing, a couple of things I'm missing. Remember that there are a couple of ways we could remove this, but before doing this, we need to deploy the app. Remember, we deployed just one time, and all of this is not in the published tab. So we need to deploy it again. There are two ways of doing it. We could do a new deployment, or better yet, we could manage the deployment just to do a new version. Why is this better? Because if someone you've already shared the URL with, then if you do a version 2, when this person refreshes the app, it will get the new version. So you don't need, he doesn't need a new URL. With the same URL, it will have the latest versions, like you do in Google Sheets. You open Google Sheets tomorrow and you have new functionalities. It will be the same. Okay, so I'm going to hit this edit pencil, and we're going to say that we're going to do a new version, and we can call this version 2 or version 1 actually. And we're going to say that now we can say that the access could be to anyone. So I will be the one that executes it, but anyone can access it. Okay, so let's deploy it and let's test it. Let's go to this. So this is the URL you're going to share with your teammates or your customers or whoever. Let's do one more test, app010, and let's buy 20, and let's click save. And let's go to purchases, and here it is. Last thing, for you to remove this, there are 3 or 4 ways. We could do a video just on that, but I know there are videos online on this. You could insert it in a Google site. You could embed it in your web page. You could put it in your Google workspace. You shouldn't have this. Okay, these are 3 methods to remove this, but we could look at it in a video. This is it. First step. I know it's not complete, but I know this. You could start using it right away and start automating a bit the input of inventories, so you don't have to go to the Google Sheet and being with the risk of damaging it and all that. Again, you could customize it in many ways. This is much better than a Google form, because we'll see in the future videos all of the things you could do. You could put custom design, your logo, your colors, your text. You could change this however you want. It's more your imagination. The other side of the coin is that it's a bit more complicated. You saw it. This is a video that took almost an hour to do the most simple thing. So it requires HTML, it requires JavaScript, it requires Google Apps Script. So it's not as easy as forms, but it's much more flexible, and you could do a lot more things. So thank you so much. I hope you liked it. And if you liked it, you could go to the Patreon page and download it so you can use it immediately. And when the part 2 is available, then you can also download part 2 and all the videos that are in the channel. And you can ask me anything about this. If not, just a subscription to the channel is more than enough. Thank you so much. Thank you especially to all my patrons. See you next time.